I like just kind of rolling in. So this summer, Jean and I made a momentous decision to get new porch furniture. We gave away our table and 4 chairs, and we purchased a table with 6 chairs. Now, you may not think that's a big deal, but for an introvert-leaning couple, this is a very bold move. Inviting 2 extra people to dinner. Doesn't seem like a lot, but to us, it's a 50% expansion in our hospitality. 2 more people, that's more diet preferences to plan around. Did their kids get married last year? Did they have a health scare we forgot about? All those things, because, to be a good host, it's not just making food, it's about attention. It's about making sure everybody is included in the conversation, even the shy ones, maybe getting the loud ones to step back a minute and just, it takes a lot of work to make it a really good, deep conversation. An 8-person table that we thought about, we thought that might drive us over the edge. Because a genuine welcome takes attention, it takes energy. I was at an event a few weeks ago, and there were 60 people in the room. I knew maybe 7. And once I'd greeted those 7, what do? And I'm quite content to just sort of stand off in the corner. I like to watch people and see what they do. Who's holding court, who looks kind of left out. And at this gathering, Janet Mills, our governor, came in, and I watched to see who would make a beeline and make sure that they were, close to the governor. And for me, I actually have to push myself in a big gathering to go out and meet new people. If I can have 3 good conversations, remember 2 of their names, that's a success. But otherwise, I kind of find it exhausting. The social dynamics, the etiquettes, the posturing, somebody going on and on about their recent vacation, and what I notice is the more I feel like I belong in the group, the more engaging I feel. And if I don't feel like I belong in the group, I hang back. I'm reticent. And it says to me that, welcoming and belonging are 2 sides of the same coin. Without a genuine welcome, nobody feels like they belong. And if we're not creating belonging, then our welcome is not complete. We're just being nice. And most churches think they're welcoming. We're a welcoming church, right? Most churches have a sign right on the front lawn that says, everyone is welcome here, right? Doesn't that make you welcoming? But experience says that, churches get bogged down in all the human challenges of building human community, forming groups, belonging. And we have hierarchies, cliques, unwritten rules of behavior that you don't know about until you break them. And my hope this morning, I'm not trying to judge churches or us for being unwelcoming or even sometimes hostile, but I want to acknowledge how hard a genuine welcome, creating a community of belonging, it's not easy. What does it take to do it better? And the measure of God's extravagant welcome that comes in our scripture lessons is, can you welcome people who are different than you? Especially if it costs you something. I am always impressed with Jesus' ability to read whatever room he's in. Here in Luke 14, he's at a social event, the kind that makes me cringe. He accepted a dinner invitation with a large group of Pharisees. That's the kind of invitation that I don't really want to accept, but I know I should go. And before he tells this parable, he watches people and they're competing for the best seats. They're trying to impress each other. And these ancient banquets, they had very strict etiquette about who sat where and the places of honor and who talked first and who had to talk after and who got to talk more. And it was all based on social hierarchies. This wasn't a church potluck where everybody just gets to talk to each other. It was more like a high-powered networking event. I mean, today, Jesus would have showed up, with business cards and practice an elevator speech before you go to a gathering like that. So he tells a parable. It's about a host whose banquet to win friends and influence people is about to crash and burn. The first invite brought in, all the right people, most of whom RSVP'd and said yes, and now they're backing out at the last minute. Pretty rude, right? Because you got to buy all the food for everybody that RSVP'd, and they're making these polite, but I don't know about these excuses. I just bought a field. I have 5 new oxen, and I want to try them out. Who needs 5 oxen anyway? I just got married. Really? You didn't know this ahead of time? Before you RSVP'd? Plausible, but kind of insulting. I mean, not making the party because you got to work. Saying, my need to make wealth is so much more important than your little party. So, in Jesus' culture, this behavior, these excuses would have been insulting. And it's a disaster for the host. He's not only being socially shamed by guests not showing up, but what is he going to do with all this food? The banquet is ready, and you might understand his anger. And I wonder if there's a modern parallel about how we sometimes feel about church attendance. Every church I've been in since the start of my career remembers the good old days when the pews were full and we had 1 million kids back in the golden era, or even pre-COVID when we had more people. And churches struggle with, why don't more people come? Don't we have a good choir and decent preaching, and isn't it good for people to come to church? So where is everyone? Don't they like us? I mean, we're nice people, right? Why don't more people come? And sometimes, like the host, the first reaction of churches is to get a little angry about it. We try so hard. What's the disconnect? And what happens is churches start to blame the guests. It must be their problem. It's society's problem. It couldn't be anything wrong with us. But look at what the host does next in the parable. Rather than lash out, he does a whole second round of invites. And he says, just go out into the streets and alleys and towns and bring in the crippled and the poor and the lame and the blind. And now this invite's interesting because notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, take all the extra food and take it down to the food pantry. Give it to the soup kitchen or the shelter so that the food isn't wasted. The edginess of the parable is that he's inviting all of these folks who are clearly a lower class. These aren't people that have 5 oxen or bought a new field. These are folks that probably don't have a suit or an appropriate dress to come, and let alone, business cards. And he's inviting all of these people with his closest friends and business associates, and they're all going to mix together and think, what are they going to talk about? And yet this still isn't enough. There's not enough people in the room. He sends out his servants a 3rd time. And he says, go to the roads, the country lanes, compel them. Invite them, urge them so that my house will be full. He's even going to invite people from away. It's come to that. The stranger. People without status, people we aren't sure what to do with. So remember, the host is inviting the island of misfit toys to meet his friends, his business associates. It's not the kind of banquet that you have if you want to, win friends and influence people. It could get awkward. Some people might leave early. They might stop inviting you to their parties. But the chairs will be full. The food will be eaten. And if you're at that party and you risk a conversation, you just might learn something new. Inviting more people to the table is not a charity event. It's not just searching for people who might fit into our club. And welcoming doesn't come naturally for many of us. It stretches our comfort zones. So I was at a clergy meeting, and a clergy colleague of mine told us this story. She decided to go to her local queer coalition meeting. And even though she's a lesbian, she felt really out of place because it was a younger crowd. And she says, they are just addressing so much issues that are a lot more complicated than just gay and lesbian and marriage equality and things like that. I'm still working through things like non-binary, polyamory. So many challenging issues. Are we ready to have wedding liturgies for thruples? Are we sure what a thruple is? And she said, I left there feeling like an old cat lady. And if you're thinking, well, we're not ready to talk about different kinds of marital arrangements and such a big change in the status quo, but Jacob in the Bible married 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. That's a throuple. So how do we navigate complex and changing dynamics of gender, sexual orientation in a Christ-like manner? And I think it's so important that we acknowledge we're not going to find simple answers to these questions in the Bible. Polygamy was very common throughout the Bible. Sometimes it was even required by law. If your brother died, you were supposed to take his wife as your own. Paul didn't think marriage was such a good idea in the first place. And so if we're searching for proof texts for 21st century gender norms and sexual orientation, we're probably not going to find it. You can't ask the Bible to explain something it hadn't heard about. transgender issues, non-binary identity. You know, women, the idea that women should have the same rights as men, that's about 5 minutes old in human history. The Bible isn't a rule book for situations it never imagined. But here's what it does give us consistently and unambiguously. It's a posture. Welcome the other. Welcome the stranger. Love your enemies. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And in that short line of Romans 15:7, it's at the end of the book, and Paul has been trying to help this very conflicted and divided and diverse church deal with some very complicated social issues. There were Jews and Gentiles, and they had different customs around eating together and food you could eat and couldn't eat. And one of the things Paul doesn't do, he doesn't say which side is correct. He doesn't come down on one side or the other about what they're fighting about. Instead, he says, welcome one another as Christ welcomed you for the glory of God. And the underlying word here that's translated welcome, it's not just tolerance. It's not just acceptance. It's embrace. Welcome means you're going to bring somebody into your circle, that they become a part of your community. Mi casa es su casa. So we bought 6 chairs this summer. 2 more than we had needed. And I think this is what hospitality requires, is you have to prepare ahead of time for the people who haven't come yet. Too many people have been told in church there is no chair for them. Jesus tells us a different story. Get more chairs. Think about, which we have, but think about who should be in them. And what would they need to come through the door? And what would it take to really convince them that they might belong, to actually be welcomed into the circle? Jesus keeps asking us to make room for people that might stretch us, surprise us, perhaps even change us. So our task is a lot more than just make sure we've got the right lawn signs, tell everybody we're welcoming of everyone, but it's to be the kind of people that make a welcome real. Because a welcome isn't complete until it becomes belonging. So this week, you'll sit around a lot of different tables. And as you gather, ask yourself, whose chair is empty? What might it cost me to make sure that someone knows it's meant for them? Amen.